You tear open a packet, tip the powder in, and you say the same word everyone says, yeast. But you've just described two completely different things with one word. One of them is a single species, industrially grown, bred like a racehorse to do one job as fast as possible. The other one, the jar of bubbling goo some people name and take on holiday, isn't one organism at all. It's a community. Two different kingdoms of life, hundreds of billions of cells, living in a truce that's older than most countries. So, what is actually alive in there? And why does one of them make bread in 2 hours and the other take 2 days and taste infinitely better? Start with the packet, because it's the simple one. Commercial baker's yeast is one species, Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Not a family, not a blend, one domesticated organism grown in enormous industrial vats on molasses, dried, and vacuum-packed. And it has been selected, generation after generation, for exactly one trait: produce carbon dioxide, fast, and do it the same way every single time. It's the Formula One car of fermentation. Predictable, powerful, boring in the best possible way. Add it to dough and it doubles your loaf in roughly 1 to 2 hours under good conditions. Some strains can inflate a dough in about 30 minutes. That reliability is the whole product. You are buying consistency. Now the jar. People call it wild yeast, and that phrase is doing a lot of lying. Yes, there are wild yeasts in there, species like Kazakhstania, Humilis, Wickerhumomyces anomalus, and often good old Saccharomyces cerevisiae too, blown in from flour and air. But the yeasts are not the majority. Not even close. In a mature starter, the ratio of yeast cells to bacteria is roughly 1 to 100. Measured across real sourdoughs, it swings anywhere from 10 bacteria per yeast to 100, but the direction never changes. Your wild yeast starter is, by head count, overwhelmingly bacterial. You have been feeding a bacteria farm and calling it a yeast. So who are they? They're lactic acid bacteria, the same broad family that makes yogurt, cheese, and sauerkraut. And the superstar of sourdough has a name worth knowing: Fructilactobacillus sanfranciscensis. It was first isolated in 1971 from San Francisco sourdough, which is literally why it carries the city's name. Under a microscope, they're unremarkable. Gram-positive, slender rods, no spores, they don't swim. But their metabolism is the whole point. It is obligately heterofermentative, a mouthful that means it can't just make one product. Feed it sugar and it produces lactic acid, acetic acid, carbon dioxide, and ethanol all at once. That's not a bug. That mixture is the flavor of sourdough. Now stop and think about what should happen next. You've got two completely different organisms, a fungus and a bacterium locked in a jar, eating the same flour with nowhere to go. Biology says one of them should win and wipe the other out. That's not what happens. They've been living together stably for centuries. Why? Here's the deal they struck, and it's one of the most elegant things in all of food science. When flour gets wet, its enzymes start chopping starch into sugars, and the main one they produce is maltose. Now, the dominant sourdough bacterium specializes in maltose. It needs it. Meanwhile, the dominant wild yeast, Kazakhstania humilis, cannot metabolize maltose at all. It's chemically blind to the most abundant food in the jar, so there is no fight because they are not eating the same meal. The bacteria take the maltose, the yeast takes the other sugars, the glucose and fructose. Two organisms, one food supply, zero competition. That's not a coincidence, that's a partnership, that natural selection locked in place. Your starter is stable because nobody wants what the other one is having. Once you see the division of food, the division of labor makes sense too. The yeast is the engine. Its job is gas. It ferments sugar into carbon dioxide and ethanol, and that carbon dioxide is what inflates every bubble in your crumb. Lift comes from the yeast, almost all of it. The bacteria are the chemistry lab. They barely contribute to the rise. What they produce is acid and aroma compounds, and they drive the pH of your dough down. So the picture is simple. The yeast makes your bread rise, the bacteria make your bread taste like sourdough. Take the bacteria away, and you have bread that puffs up and tastes of nothing, which, as it happens, is exactly what the packet gives you. Let's talk about that acid, because there isn't one, there are two, and they taste completely different. Lactic acid is the mild one, soft, round, yogurty, creamy. Acetic acid is the sharp one, pungent, vinegary, the smell that punches you in the nose when you open a really tangy starter. Which one you get depends on the bacteria and the conditions. Some lactic acid bacteria are homofermentative. They turn sugar almost entirely into lactic acid and give you that gentle sourness. Others are heterofermentative. They make lactic and acetic, plus carbon dioxide and ethanol. And here's the detail that surprises people. By sheer quantity, there is always far more lactic acid in your dough than acetic. The bulk of the sourness is lactic. Acetic acid just has a much louder aroma, so a small amount dominates how sour it smells. which means the sourness of your bread isn't luck. It's a dial, and you're holding it. Temperature is the big lever. Ferment warm around 27 to 30 degrees Celsius, that's 80 to 86 Fahrenheit, and you favor the lactic side. Faster, milder, creamier bread. Ferment cool around 20 to 24 Celsius, 68 to 75 Fahrenheit, and things slow down and shift toward acetic. Sharper, tangier, more aggressive. The second lever is hydration. A wet slack starter lets acids diffuse and pushes the culture toward lactic milder. A stiff, low hydration starter favors acetic sharper. So, want a gentle, mellow sourdough? Keep it warm and wet. Want that face-puckering San Francisco tang? Keep it cool and stiff. Same jar, same flour, different instructions. And the acid does something beyond flavor. As the bacteria work, the pH of the dough falls, the whole loaf becomes a mildly acidic environment. That changes which enzymes are active, it changes how the gluten behaves, and critically, it makes the bread a hostile place for mold and spoilage organisms. That's the real reason a proper sourdough keeps for days on the counter, while a fast yeasted loaf goes fluffy, then furry, in about 2. You didn't add a preservative. You cultured one. The bacteria are, quite literally, defending your bread. So, is the packet the villain? No, and anyone who tells you it is selling something. Commercial yeast genuinely outperforms wild strains at the one thing it was built for. Laboratory and commercial strains produce more carbon dioxide and ferment faster than wild ones. That's measured, not marketing. Bread in a couple of hours, identical every time. A starter gives you the opposite trade, 12 to 48 hours. A bit of unpredictability, and in exchange, acids, aroma, keeping quality and depth that a single organism simply cannot manufacture on its own. It's not good versus bad. It's a machine versus an ecosystem, and you pick the one that fits the bread you want today. So next time you feed that jar, know what you're actually feeding. Not wild yeast, but a functioning civilization, a fungus, and a bacterium that divided the food supply between them. One making the gas, the other making the flavor and the defense, running continuously since long before anyone explained why it works. The packet is a machine you buy. The starter is an ecosystem you keep alive. Question for you. Does your starter have a name? Tell me in the comments and be honest about how long you've had it. Subscribe to TheLeaveningLab, the science and history of bread, made simple. And next time, why bakers slash the top of the loaf, and what actually happens in the first 10 minutes in the oven. See you at the next